Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the Redesign podcast. In this podcast, we speak with people who've got stories worth sharing. We hope that they inspire and support you in creating a more sustainable, respectful, and inclusive future. Last week, I had the chance to meet Susana Pajero. Susana is based in Argentina, specialized in accessibility, and she is also the co-founder of the Latin American community DALAT, that brings together people interested in and working on accessibility. In this episode, Susana shares her personal story into the field of accessibility. You'll have the chance to feel her passion for the topic while she breaks down some of the misconceptions around it. In talking with Susana, I really appreciated her talent for finding good examples to illustrate what accessibility is and how we can work towards it. And so it's really nice and easy to follow her train of thought and to feel motivated to act and join the change. So I highly encourage you to listen to the full episode because there is so much to learn from her. And I promise it gets more and more interesting with every minute. So let's begin and welcome Susana. Hey, Susana, nice to see you again. And thanks for your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I know that you bring a very strong and inspiring story of why you work in the field of accessibility and inclusion. So I wonder if you could, for our listeners, tell a little bit about that moment in your life when you realized that this is what you want to do.
Well, I've been working in this field for 8, probably 9 years now. And well, I used to be a law student actually. And I started to work in digital rights. And then I realized that the technical part of it was really appealing to me. So I started to study a little bit more about the technical part and started to work in the field. In that moment, the client that I was assigned to had this new project. It was an accessibility project. So we had to spend some months studying accessibility. I loved it in the theoretical part.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were about to start this project, after all of these months studying, we were having this big dinner and we're going to start with the project the next day. And when I was coming back from this dinner, I had an accident and I had to be in a wheelchair for 3 months because of that accident. And that meant that I didn't get to start the project with all my workmates.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things in my life changed dramatically. It's like in my own house, I couldn't even use my bathroom or go to my bedroom. I couldn't move inside my own house with a wheelchair. And in the city, right, it was awful. I had to go to the doctors constantly, and the buses wouldn't stop because I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't even go to the market that was only 2 blocks away because there were no ramps in my street. So then, but it's not only about the physical part of it. It was people reaction to that.
Mm-hmm.
It was like some people was trying to be kind, but it also felt like pity, and they were trying to be nice, and in that they actually put me out of things. It's like, don't worry about it, we will do it. And like slowly I was losing everything I took for granted some days ago. And in that moment, actually there's a very specific moment. when I was so tired of that I was crying in the street and told to myself, wow, there's people that actually lives their lives like this. And then I didn't feel pity. I was kind of angry, it's like, wow, I had I studied all the theory so far, and I needed this to actually understand all the work that we still have to do in this matter. And that is not only theory, it's about changing the entire culture around it.
Wow, that's a very touching story. Yeah? You mentioned the term accessibility, and we have a very broad audience. So I would like to ask you, could you maybe give a bit of a brief definition of how you understand accessibility, and maybe also how you think that it differs from inclusion?
Okay. Accessibility, well, you have like different definitions, but in a broad sense, it is the capability to access, when you can actually access to something. It can be physical. Physical accessibility is more about architecture and public spaces, but you have digital accessibility too. And the interesting part of digital accessibility is that it's not only about the capabilities of the users, it is only one of the several points it touches. And it is about hardware, all the devices that you can access or not, software, the different kind of software that you're using, that you can access the same products in the same way, with the same experience, with the different hardware, software, independently from your location, your language, your culture. There's a lot of other factors that can exclude people from the digital world. Because when we think about accessibility, usually we think about disabilities. It's like the first thing we think about. But disability in the digital world is not more than that intersection where a diverse situation encounters an inaccessible environment. In that point, you have a disability, you have a barrier to access. And that barrier to access can be actually not having a good infrastructure or a good internet network. So you cannot, or maybe the economic part, you cannot pay for access to the internet. So that things put people out of the digital world too. I think that now with the pandemic, that happens to be an environmental disability that excluded us from the public spaces and those spaces that we had to be with a lot of other people. We had to stay home, and we had to interact more in the digital world. And then we realized the importance of accessibility and how many people encountered barriers to be fully in the digital world. And I think that is one of the positives, let's say, positive things that the pandemic is letting us understand, and probably and hopefully do something about it.
It's super interesting what you say. You called it an environmental disability, while I think commonly disability is a term that's always used in connection to people, right? We talk often about people with disabilities, but the way that you express it, you detach it from people. Why do you think it's so important to talk about disabilities detached from people?
Because disabilities are not per se a barrier, but in context, in relation to something else. I always say the same example, but normality is cultural. It is a cultural concept. It is created. It's not something objective that exists and cannot be changed. It's just something that we created, and it constantly changes too. So let's say that, well, you and I can run, right? But tomorrow the concept of normality changes, and to run is to be as fast as Usain Bolt.
Yeah, I am far away from that.
Yeah. In that case, we would be people with disabilities, right? So that is why actually there's a huge part of disability that is detached from the person. That is the concept of normality. That's why I don't like this concept. I actually love that part of accessibility, that is, let diverse people develop fully, and that's it. They don't have to fit in normality. It's a word that I don't use very much, but that's why it differs from inclusion. Inclusion kind of sounds like, well, we have this square that is normality, and we are going to include people that is diverse in here. And it's like, are we sure we want to, we want to keep this square as it is? It doesn't sound very interesting. It's like why not we break that square and let people, diverse people, fully be, and let's create a space together. In that case, it would be integration.
Yeah. But couldn't it also be that you open your square? So by talking with more people that are different to yourself, especially, which every other person is, but by talking with more people, you open the square in a sense, right? So the square might get a new shape, actually. So including people doesn't necessarily mean including them to a specific shape, but it could also mean allowing your shape to change.
Exactly. That would be accessibility, is to understand that you're not letting people in, you're opening those gates to start living with new people and understanding different perspectives and ways of functioning and different realities. And together you can build something that works for everyone.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, very simple, short question, but why do you think it is important to prioritize accessibility?
Oh, that's a typical question in this field. And the more you study accessibility and live with this new way of seeing things, the more difficult it is to answer that question, because constantly your mind is like, why not? It's like, why wouldn't you want to contact with more people and actually help, create a society and an environment that allows diversities to be? But first of all, the importance of it is human rights. Accessibility is above all a human right. And as human beings, we have to guarantee, I don't know how to say it in English, but that more people has fully lives. And that is your responsibility as a human being, and that'd be the first one. But the second one is how many things we are missing because we don't have these persons around in our environment. all the perspectives you're missing. And I always give the same example. I know it is kind of an extreme example, but for example, until some time ago, the smarter person in the world was someone with disabilities. It was Stephen Hawking. And without technology or accessibility, he wouldn't have been able to share all his knowledge with us. And I feel like, well, if that wouldn't exist, who would have lost more? Like he or the world? And it's like, how many things we're missing because people cannot access to these spaces and environments where we are creating.
Mm-hmm. That's a very powerful example. Indeed, what would we as humanity have missed if Stephen Hawking wouldn't have been able to share his ideas?
Yeah, wow. And how many ideas and people and things that we're missing right now.
Yes. Well, yes, indeed. And how many Stephen Hawkings are out there that we don't even know of because they can't express themselves and participate with the means that are offered?
Yeah, not only people like him, you know,
of course.
But how many people, you know, that is not known or famous or something that affects positively in our lives every day, and how many more people we could meet and actually have a great relationship with and open our minds, you know, if we had the chance to have an accessible environment around us.
Yeah. Let's get a bit practical. So I know that you're working with businesses as well, and I would like to give you a bit of a challenge. So imagine a company would approach you to make their platform more accessible. Let's say it's an e-commerce platform, a shop maybe, and you should be doing that in 3 months. They ask you for a very short-term commitment, I know, but otherwise they expect a lawsuit because they are scared that they will be sued because of the current state of their platform. What would you recommend?
Well, first of all, address the problem. It is really common in the private sector that they feel like if they don't mention accessibility, they won't have any problem. It's like, oh, we know we're not accessible, just don't mention it. Because if we publicly put, I don't know, an accessibility statement, it's like they will realize we're not accessible. And it's like, well, if someone that actually needs accessibility enters your product, they will realize as soon as they enter that it is not accessible. So it's like that. It's like at one side, at one key you tap, you know exactly that product is not accessible.
So, you can't hide it.
Yeah, you can't hide it. They think they can, but they can't. Mm-hmm. But so the first advice would be address it, you know, let people know that you're working on it, that you are doing something to improve this. Okay, so the first of all would be do an accessibility statement, make it public. You know, the second one would be open at least one gate. It's like make available at least one. Let's say that you have the worst case scenario. The product is really inaccessible. So at least put a contact form or work on your contact form and make it accessible. Let people that needs accessibility let you know what they need. They have to have at least one channel to talk to you and to actually request what they need from you. For example, let's say that you have an e-commerce platform. Okay, in that case, they need to buy something in your platform. Well, put a contact form that is accessible and let them do the I don't know, check the different products, pick a product, pay for that product, everything through, I don't know, email, you know, put someone that could help them through an email, through a phone, you know? And that would be not forever, it's like a temporary patch, but at least you are allowing them to use it. Of course, that accessibility means equal access, and equal access is not only being able to do the same, but doing it the same way too. So sometimes I feel like I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to buy online because I don't want to, I don't want to talk to someone else. I just want to be, I don't know, in the middle of the night, quietly in my house, scrolling through different, products, pick the best or the one that I want and buy it, and yes, having no interaction with anyone. And you have to allow that too. So it will be a first step. Don't stay in that first step. And the third one would be contact an accessibility specialist that will help you break all of those myths around accessibility. For example, that accessibility will, take a lot of time to the team. That is not real. It's like if you have an accessibility professional in your team, this person will know that the additional time in the process to create something accessible cannot be higher than 5% of your actual time. So you need someone that will help you introduce accessibility, and especially know that accessibility is not something you do once, it is an habit. So you have to change the culture in your company and make it something regular. It is part of all the duties and activities that your teams have in the day-to-day. Because otherwise you can hire a remediation team, you can hire an accessibility consultant for some time and make your platform accessible. But if you don't keep doing the right things every day, in some months you will have an inaccessible platform again.
Or you will call the consultant again.
Exactly, you will have to hire people again to remediate it. So no, you have to maintain accessibility in time, and that is a different project. And the only way that you can actually do it is change the culture inside your organization.
Yeah. But so, time is an interesting aspect, right? And budgets, obviously, as well. So what would you say if a management team really refuses to fix accessibility defects?
Oh, that happens a lot. Unfortunately, that happens a lot. So sometimes you can use other, arguments to make it happen. But because it happens that you talk to management and say, well, it is a human right, and they are like, well, but we have managed to go this far without complying with accessibility. We can keep like this. It's weird and crazy. And sometimes the only way that you can convince them is from a business standpoint. And from a business standpoint, accessibility is a great option too, because it will help your SEO, because of how search engines work. When the robots start, navigating through all the results, the possible results, they do it in a very similar way than a screen reader. So if it's optimized for a screen reader, it will help your position in the results too. And for example, there's a lot of people that only sells that part, SEO. But platforms like, let's say, Google, that is the more non, search engine, and they constantly fight against these tricks of SEO. Why? Because the only way that they will be the best is that they provide to their users very good results. And those results cannot be modified by tricks, from the private sector. So they fight against it. They constantly find those tricks and fight against them. So I will give you an example. There's something called alt spam. That is when you use the alt attribute of an image to put keywords instead of an actual alternative text. Now the search engines actually realize, and they will put you out of the results. So those little tricks that they want to implement just in order to improve SEO don't actually work, or eventually won't work, because search engines are fighting against them constantly. But if you do it in an accessible way, they won't block you, because you're doing it how it is supposed to be. So it is, so it is.
That's super interesting, because now in a sense you say, on one hand, of course, it's a human right, so we should anyway act upon it, because it's a right of every human being to be able to access certain things. On the other hand, you say it actually has a business value. There is even more potential for businesses in the private sector. They could create more value from it if they were to make platforms accessible. So why don't they? Why don't some companies do it? What do you think is the biggest hurdle for them, or what is stopping them? What is making it so hard for them?
Oh, I think there's several factors. And one of them is that there's a lot of myths around accessibility. For example, that it is only for people with disabilities, that people with disabilities are a target. They are not. It's like, it's not our target. It's like in the clients, it's like, what, people is not your target? It's like what you're talking about. But there's, and the other myth is that it is too expensive, that it takes a lot of time, and so it can affect the times to market. And that is not real. That is not real at all. And there's some information about it in the internet, but you have to look for it. So I think that's why they don't know actually how accessibility works. And the second one would be, it is kind of our responsibility as the digital world creators too, because you don't need a manager to tell you to do your work respecting human rights. It is your choice too. And it could be that's why I usually, when people come to me and tell me, well, I would love to implement accessibility, but my manager doesn't care, or they don't want to implement accessibility. And it's like, well, but you could do a lot of things on your own in your work. They wouldn't even realize that you're doing them, but you're doing your work properly, and it is your choice. There's a part of, they cannot make you, go against a human right. And you have to understand as a professional that it is your responsibility too. And I think that another factor in that case is that the digital world is growing really fast, and all the time we need more and more people to create it, developers, designers, testers. And in a lot of in universities, you don't get the knowledge about accessibility while you're learning to design or to code. And that is a big part of this problem, is that the people that is actually working on the construction of the digital world don't know about these little practices that they have to follow. For example, 80% of the accessibility issues would disappear just if you respect the semantic of the code.
Mm-hmm.
So if you use the semantic of the code properly, then you can do a very much accessible product. So I think there's a lot of factors. It would be basically, first of all, myths.
Mm-hmm.
Second one would be the professionals that are not taking this themselves, the decision in their own. And the third one would be that at least for now, different academies or spaces where you can learn to code and universities are not providing the right information about how to do it and why it is so important.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is basically why we are constantly putting on production inaccessible products.
I think this already shows a little bit that working in this field has the potential to come with a lot of frustrations and disappointments, in the sense that there is a lot that is for you, Susanna, maybe out of your own hands, out of your own control. So I'm a bit curious, what is it that you find most difficult about your work? And maybe also on the positive end, what gives you the motivation and satisfaction as well?
A very disappointing part of my profession would be that this part, that there's constantly there's people putting on production inaccessible products. So it feels like you're, fighting and all the odds are not in your favor. Because it's like there's a lot of inaccessible code that is constantly being put out there, and you're trying to do your work that is a minority. The accessibility professionals are a minority inside of another minority that would be the technical teams that create the digital world. So that can be difficult, but this won't sound very, very good, but it will be good eventually, is that our generation will be the first one to grow old in the digital world, being so dependent on the digital world. And of course that when you grow old, you start to live with different disabilities. We are so used that all the products in the digital world are made for us. Mm-hmm. And it is so simple for us to use them, to access to them. And in time we will be losing, our motor abilities, our sight, our hearing, and that inaccessibility will start to be felt in our bodies. Mm-hmm. And will be eventually excluded from the digital world. And we will realize that we didn't think about the future, and we will be on the place of a lot of people where they are right now. And that will be a huge wake-up call, I think. Mm-hmm. And I think that from that moment on, I hope we will think more about accessibility and understand it is something that we need, that all of us need.
So when do you think is a good moment to start with accessibility?
Today. Always today. I usually talk to a lot of people that wants to start in accessibility, and they feel like, oh no, I have so much to study, I have to do a lot of things and need a lot of practice until I actually start implementing accessibility in my day-to-day. But no, I'm like, do it right now. it doesn't matter if the only thing that you know so far is to measure contrast ratio, and you will do a better, a better choice of your colors. So some accessibility is better than non-accessibility, than any accessibility at all. And once you start doing something, you can feel the commitment, and that you have already started. So you will keep going and moving forward. And try to join communities, try to join spaces where you can have accessibility professionals near you. We are always waiting for people to ask more about the topic. We are so passionate about it that we love what we do. We are so much of an activist. And we love when people reach us to say, hey, I want to start doing this. So we will provide you with all the information and all the advices that we can. And that will help you a lot to have someone that could help you through that road that sometimes can be, kind of frustrating or difficult, because there's so many information out there. If you enter, for example, you enter the W3C webpage, you will find a lot of information, but it is sometimes so much that you feel like, oh no, I cannot understand it, or where should I begin, or be intimidating in some way. But if you know an accessibility professional, then you will have kind of a guide in that. So that would be my advice.
That's a very nice advice, I think. And actually, that brings me also to another idea, because you're also you're the founder of a community yourself in Latin America. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that? What brought you to start it, what your goal is, and what do you think it means for the people who are involved?
Okay, my community is called DALAT. DALAT stands for Latin American Accessible Development, and it was a need that I found, talking to different professionals in Latin America that were dedicated to accessibility. Here in Latin America, accessibility is not yet a business. It's like there's no accessibility companies or a lot of work opportunities for accessibility professionals. So if you do this, it's because you love it. You're more of an activist than anything else. And as activists, we're always trying to improve things, to talk about accessibility, so we can make companies and people and governments to address accessibility. So I realized that, first of all of us were working for the global north, and but we were trying to improve our realities here in Latin America. And for that, we would be doing a lot of effort with different activities. And then I realized that it was better if we would connect and try to think about, activities for that together. And maybe our efforts would be more efficient. So in trying to do that, it was so little people, and we weren't very much people when we started, but right now we're thousands. We're only 1 year ago, and we have a lot of people in our community right now. And actually our community not only has right now people, but like individuals, but we have universities, non-profit organizations from different countries in Latin America, people from governments of different countries in Latin America. So we're growing really fast and doing great things. but creating free trainings that you can find, for example, in YouTube, that are accessible and in Spanish, and that you can give an exam and have a certification from a university. That helps a lot of people with disabilities to have certifications and to have better jobs. And we have like different plans to start more and more trainings, so we can help more people to have a better job, you know. And but the most important part of it is that we want to start changing the culture, you know. Right now we are working with some governments that took the commitment to start changing their cultures inside the organizations to make them more accessible. So they can actually have the talent of people with disabilities inside their teams. Right now, there's a law that actually makes you, it's like, I don't know how to say it in English, but you have to have a minimum of people with disabilities in your teams. But as the environments are not accessible, they cannot fully develop as professionals. So we are trying to change that, to help the governments understand that if they have accessible environments, they can actually have the talent and use the talent of all of these people that is actually working there, and that in a lot of occasions they cannot do their duties because of its inaccessible environment.
Wow. So you were mentioning that in the beginning you realized that you were all working for the global north. What does it mean to your community to be located in Latin America and the global south?
Well, it is a big topic in here, because it's hard to realize that you spend 8 or more hours working to improve the accessibility of products that will help people that are not in your region. And then only 2 blocks away from your house, people is being excluded from the digital world, and you're not doing anything about it. It's hard. That moment when you realize, it's really difficult. And I wanted all of this talent that was dedicated to the private sector and other regions to be in our region, doing something for our region. I wouldn't like Latin America to become a region that only export, you know, the talent or the great things that we can do, but to use that in our very own region with our very own needs. For example, I was working for a little e-learning platform, trying to improve usability and experience for kids with disabilities. And at the same time, I would know a kid that is in my, you know, close to my family, that stopped going to school because he couldn't even use the bathroom because it wasn't accessible. And I was like, wow, my mind blowed. You know, it's like, wow, like I am trying to improve the experience for some kids, and right here I have kids that cannot even access to the bathroom in school. I have to do something for my region. I have to work and apply all this knowledge I got, but in my region. And I feel like in some point, a lot of accessibility professionals felt the same way in a moment of their lives. So they started doing something for the region. And then I said, well, we need to, I need to create a space where we can, you know, gather all these people, and we have to do something about it. We have to put all this knowledge to the service of people here. And once we started creating more accessible spaces, I started to know more diverse people, because that's the magical part of creating an accessible environment in your life, around yourself, is that new and super exciting people start to appear, because they can now, be around you. And that opened my mind so much. And I then realized, wow, how many things we are missing in the digital world when we don't have an environment that allows all people to be there and to be part of the main discussion. And that happens a lot, in these environments in the North, even in those great environments where you can meet great activists and professionals. They are spaces that are mainly in English and with people from the global North. And I was like, there's so many voices and ideas and things that they don't know, because we are not here. And so we must be here. So I said, okay, it's not only a Latin American community, it is a Latin American community that wants to create bridges with other communities and other regions, because we know exactly that the result of those interactions brings so many new and beautiful ideas. And that's what we are looking for.
That's beautiful. And indeed, you're right now also connecting with the community that sits in the global North, right? So I'm actually curious if you had like one wish or one task to give to the redesign community, what would that be? What wish would you like to address to the community that is listening right now?
Well, difficult question. So many things, but I think that the main one would be connect strongly between, your own community, understand everything you have to offer, and then understand how much value there is in connecting with other communities too. To create bridges with other communities brings these kind of discussions and conversations that will help us to help each other in some way, because all of us, we have a privilege that we just don't address them. It's like we're not fully, fully, I don't know how to say it, but conscious could be. We're not fully conscious, or aware. We're not fully aware of all the privileges that we have and how we can use that to help others. Sometimes we think that the big changes will come from huge companies or managers or leaders in the world. And every day in those little moments when we are by ourselves with our computer, taking little decisions, like, I don't know, while you're designing, and you suddenly say, okay, I will change this color so someone with color blindness can perceive this. I will make it simpler so someone with cognitive disabilities or someone that don't speak this language can understand it better. Those little decisions that you take alone in your house when you're working are the ones that change people's lives. So you have to address the power you have as a builder, as someone that builds constantly the digital world. And that from those spaces is where real change and impact will come. So address that power and use it responsibly.
That's a very nice wish. I think that also makes the perfect wish to close the conversation. I would really like to thank you in the name of everybody that had the chance to listen in, that you were here to tell your story and to share your expertise. And I really hope that we can stay in touch, and also maybe somebody might reach out to you.
Yeah, definitely reach out. Let's connect. And thank you so much for inviting me. You are so nice and so patient. I know that my English is not the best, but I tried my best. I hope this is understandable for the people that is going to hear it.
You're
And
doing great.
yeah, and thank you so much, because these spaces are not that common, that we have people from so different regions talking about a topic like this that's so important. So keep doing this, and thanks so much for giving me the opportunity of being here with you.
Thanks to you. Thanks a lot.